Hey guys, it's Richard here from the Experimentation podcast. Today I've got Nima Yassini on the line. Nima's from Deloitte Digital. He's one of the partners. Previously, he was the CEO of New Republic, one of these well-established CRO agencies in Australia. They got recently acquired in March of 2022, this year, I believe. And it's good to have you on the line with us, Nema. Thanks for making time in your busy schedule to talk to me about everything CRO.
Thanks for having me on.
No
Always
worries.
love talking about it, so thank you for taking the time to have a chat.
Yeah, no worries. And I know you're a busy guy. There's been a lot of back and forth, but that's what happens when
We made it work.
Yeah, we're finally here. So look, you've got an interesting background. Perhaps you can talk to the audience about, your background and how your agency, moved into providing CRO and experimentation services.
So we got into experimentation. I wouldn't say accidentally, but out of necessity. My background's in user experience design, and I've been in the category for over 25 years. So I kind of started when UX started coming into the market, and we were talking about user-centered design. There was a bunch of us who basically, like anything in the internet, we go, oh yeah, we know that, and we can't figure it out as we go. So we got into the early days of user experience design, and the greatest challenge I had after 20 years of doing UX design was that it was still a subjective category. Your opinion on good design versus mine, and the internet has slowly picked up category norms, but there was still, people making decisions like logo goes on the right-hand side. And so some of these things, and when you're working with clients, it's annoying. And so we needed a way of being able to validate what we did, or creating a method in which we neutralized opinion and we got into a way of guiding a discussion. And I remember when we first set up New Republic, me and my co-founder, our greatest challenge was around how do we differentiate? How can we do something that's different to everybody else? Because every man and his dog talks to user experience design, and fundamentally the greatest challenge with our category is it's a post-purchase realization. You realize someone's good after you pay them and you work with them. And so people scrutinize the individual rather than the work, right? Because what are you buying? You're buying the person. And so we needed a way of differentiating, and we needed a way of neutralizing this conversation around what is good design versus bad design. And so experimentation became a platform in which we could use data to guide the decision around what is good design versus bad design. And so unbeknownst to us, we saw it as a way of kind of proving ourselves right in our design methodology, but it completely changed our business. It changed the way we looked at design. It became this myth busting. It became frustrating because the things that you thought as a designer of practicing design for 20 years, you would realize actually that's not what users want. And so all this ideology that you had around, I put users at the center, you realize that, I'm fundamentally flawed in my design thinking because I'm taking data or conversations I've had with customers and I'm interpreting that back into design. And unless my interpretation is absolutely correct, the design's not going to be right. And so experimentation became this change process. It became a change program for us in which we literally stop subjectively making interpretation of these big quantums of data and large, long design projects into fast iterative sprints where we would release different outcomes in the experience and test if they actually worked. And if they did, we then bank that into a bigger design project. And so that was where we started, and that was why we started. Unbeknownst to us, we got into a category that was growing. We accidentally found ourselves in a category that was growing, funded by Optimizely as a tech partner. And we were just at the right place in the right time. And that ideology of integrating experimentation into user experience completely changed our business. Because as you know, experimentation primarily came out of the media industry, not the UX industry. And so we just took something that was already out there and blended it into what we were doing. And it was at the same time as, big data, and everyone was talking about data. Yep. So we actually found a way of taking design and data and merging them together to create this beautiful, harmonious outcome in which you validate design before you actually release. And so that was our foray into experimentation.
And did you like? I mean, this is like 2010 when you set up your agency. I don't remember. Well, I don't remember if the term CRO was even known that well back then. Like, did you like in your exploration of adopting Optimizely and being more data driven and that kind of stuff? Did you go on Google and find I don't know other experimenters to network with? Did you go to conferences?
Well, no,
What
I
was your
had exposure to it when I was living in London. I was also
mm,
working with HSBC at the
yeah,
time through an agency I worked with that called JWT, and there was a technology called Maximizer who provided tech and services,
yeah,
and they were working with HSBC around account opens and so forth. And so I got exposed to experimentation. That would have been, I don't know, 2007.
whoa,
And so I was exposed to it and I was working with them at that point. And then when I came to Australia and we decided we need to pivot down this pathway, I just reached out to my contacts at Maximizer and said, give me the license. Give me the license. Let me set it up in Australia. And
yeah,
so that's where our journey began. To be really frank, like in Australia, when we started, there was like two other companies that talked about experimentation, one in Melbourne, another one in Brisbane. The guys in Melbourne, I'm not sure where they're at anymore, but the guys in Brisbane, Conversion King, is a guy called Matt.
yeah,
Fantastic lad, incredible. And we had just we were like, three lone people in the sea of Australia. But the great thing was our conversation was really, we all came about it in different ways. Matt has an incredible and still does an incredible process. The lads down in Melbourne were very much in that media, more kind of marketing style, and we were much more in the UX behavioral sciences side. And
yeah,
we all had a different opinion on how to approach the problem and how to leverage the technology. But we were there was only three of us, and I remember going onto LinkedIn. There was no CRO expert or growth hacker or growth or blah 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 blah. Everyone was
yeah,
talking growth hacking, but growth hacking was growth at all costs. It doesn't matter what you do. It wasn't around optimization or experimentation. It was just growth at all costs, and inside that was this slither called experimentation. Now you got to remember, experimentation goes like A/B testing goes back way before any of this stuff. Like Google was the first one to run a test on the page results. That was the first test ever run on the internet, recorded test run on the internet, run by Google to figure out, do we show 10 listings or do we show 30 listings? What's the right number, right?
mm,
So when we were in Australia, we're on the arse end of the world, about 5 years away from what is claimed as being innovation. So we were the only three people out there, and there was this technology Optimizely, and these guys would fly in once a quarter,
yeah,
spend a month here, and fly out. And they would then equip us with stuff to go out to market and sell for them on their behalf, or partner up with them to sell tech at the same time as services. So it was very much, we were crafting the idea, and my business partner who set it up with me, Stacey, she had a real thing around, we're not gonna change the world by staying in Australia and looking at each other. You need to go overseas. So
mm,
each year we would go overseas and actually spend time in our competitors' offices. We would actually email our competitors and who would be our competitors, and we would say, "Can we just spend a week in your office and just learn from you?" And you'd be amazed how many people would say yes to that.
they were
And
actually
so we
open to coming over and
100%, 100%. We didn't compete in the same market. We
yeah,
weren't stealing each other's clients. So their revenues were protected, and we just wanted to learn from them. And we shared knowledge back. So we
yeah,
were like, "This is what we do. That's what we do." And we spend a week. We spend a week talking to people. We spend a week thing, and then out of that there was this formation guy called Chris Gower, who I don't know
yeah,
if you know him, but
yeah, wider funnel fame.
yep,
Did
that's
they
right.
merge
That's
with
right.
conversion.com?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Conversion.
heard about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. The
Yeah,
boys from Conversion acquired him. So he and a guy called Andreas from in Germany, they set up a group called Go Group Digital,
yeah,
and they basically invited one company from every country to represent, Go Group, and they created this amalgamation, and we all jumped in, and we basically created this forum where we would share, and that really was the pinnacle point around us becoming a forefront leader around experimentation. So we were able to go overseas and see how others in the market do it. What are they doing? What do we need to bring to Australia? So, in the early days, there was no networking. There were no podcasts. There was just three guys in Australia and
Was it
us looking outside the world to figure out what should we be doing.
was it kind of like, and without going into the specific details or clients, was it kind of like in the early days making a lot of mistakes and bumbling your way through because you didn't have the luxury of going on. There was no CXL optimizer course. There was no blog. Maybe there was some blogs, but there was no CXL.com blog to go on or YouTube.
It's the same thing that you're saying today is what's about to happen in Australia. Every agency right now says they do CRO, but the
Yeah,
majority are self-taught. They're all the greater majority of people doing experimentation are self-taught, and the only way that they learn is by hacking and learning. It's a reality of the category. We say what we do, we pretend that we do it, then we actually learn through mistakes, and then we perfect it, right?
yeah.
UX was no different. When the UX, I remember I was selling search engine optimization before the days of Google. And I'd go in, I can get you ranked on Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves and shit like
Alta
that.
Vista
And then all of
days.
a
Yeah,
sudden it
yeah,
was like, I can get you ranked on Google. So
yeah.
I've been around this category long enough. We are perfect players of fake it till you make it. This whole
Yeah.
category works on fake it till you make it. And experimentation in the early days, that's what it was. CRO, that's what it was. We all went through that pattern. Some of us started early, so we've got the hindsight of learning and growing from that. And some of us are going to start nowish, and yeah, what I hope is the people who've started are learning from the people who've been around. So at least clients aren't getting burnt through the experience, because when clients get burnt, we all suffer.
Well, you don't want to. Yeah, I guess what you're saying is there should be some sort of, I don't know, mentorship or guidance for people these days who are starting out, compared to maybe your
And they are.
time. There was no mentors. It was a bit more
It was.
wild
We
west.
went overseas. We spent overseas. We invested money. We invested time. We went overseas, and we learned from people who are in markets a little bit more advanced than us. Like, we
Mm,
were in Europe when e-commerce wasn't even a thing in Australia. We were learning from organizations who were servicing e-commerce businesses, because there was no e-commerce businesses in Australia. This is the early days, right? And then e-commerce took off around about 2011, 2012. It started taking off. And
yeah,
so we had all this background knowledge because we've spent time in Europe, we've spent time in the US learning from these people. And the technology vendors always had events like Optimizely had its Opticon events. We always attended those events. We would go to Germany to the growth summit. Conversionista in Switzerland runs an incredible event. So there's pockets of these events out there, and they're great platforms to go and learn. But you're right, you didn't learn from people in Australia. You had to go overseas to learn.
yeah. And I mean, what I've noticed for myself is it's either North America or I think it's the Nordic countries that are like CROs are huge. You got like the top guns in
Yeah,
those areas, but I think Australia is still quite a nascent industry even after, let's say, 10 years of you being having your agency. Like, so I mean, just leading to the next question, like what do you think about the state of the CRO industry in Australia? Do you see it maturing? Is there more awareness of what it is for
it's
companies?
yeah. I define the CRO industry in Australia as a teenager sex life. Everyone's talking about it, but no one's really doing it, right? So like,
Yeah,
everyone's got some type of program. Everyone's talking about it, but I think everyone's kind of jumped experimentation and gone into personalization, and they haven't realized that the power of these two bring together. And if anyone listens to this podcast,
yeah,
I would really, I'd hope people take one thing away: is personalization and experimentation need to live together. Because if personalization is all about context and content, so right message to the right person at the right time,
yeah,
its objective is to get a click through onto your website, your app, or whatever, or a specific page, right?
hmm,
If that page is not optimized or the funnel is not optimized, you've gotten more people to the page or into the funnel, but they're not converting. Or by quantums, you're going to get people converting better than what you had before, because now you've got personalized experiences. But fundamentally, your pipe is only better because you've shoved more people in. So
yeah,
how do you optimize that pipe to deliver greater sales, which is what you're ultimately trying to do with your personalization program, right? So where experimentation looks at structure, flow, and conversion, personalization looks at content and context. If you marry these two together to work together as a harmonious offering or a harmonious capability, all of a sudden, you've got a very different program. You've got a fundamentally different delivery of your capability. Most people don't do that. They keep the funnel the same.
Yeah.
They focus on personalization because it's easy to comprehend and easy to buy. If you're a vegetarian, don't show meat dishes. Super simple. So it's easy to understand, easy to buy. Experimentation isn't. Go and sit in front of someone and talk about statistical significance, a micro test or a blended macro experiment. There's so much complexity to it because in a way it is a bit of a science to how you run it. And so by being more complex, adoption rates aren't fast. So Australia's maturity is, everyone's talking about it. Adoption's slow, and there's not many great practitioners out there, and there's not much in the way of courses and training to help people.
Yeah.
CXL is probably one of the only ones. I mean, we've got our own, but fundamentally there isn't enough. There is no, course. There are thousands of courses in UX. They teach it in universities. They don't teach experimentation. And I can't think of why a designer would not integrate experimentation into their design process. If design is all about user experience and experimentation is all about the optimization of experience, how can a designer not use that data to deliver better customer experience in their design? So to me, the category of UX design and experimentation need to blend. We need to bring those two capabilities together. And I think it's going to take time for us to have best practice as a standard or accept or standardized practice as a way of working. I don't think we're there yet, and I think we've got a long journey, but at least there's more people talking about it, which is the first step to getting to where we need to.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, there's a lot of agencies, or the full service agencies now. I've seen that they'll whack on. We do CRO on our website, but I think in my experience, it's kind of a bit patchwork, like how they'll do it. Like, there's not enough emphasis done on research or the psychological principles used for this test.
Yep.
And sort of thing. Like, I was in a previous job where I was working with one agency. It was just saying, oh, we'll change this button color from blah 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 to this, and
I hate that button
all,
test.
yeah, all these
The
BS
worst thing Optimizely
blog
did was
things,
that button test. Yeah. Damn
and
Optimizely for what it's done, and thank God for Optimizely for what it's done. But,
yeah,
the early days of button tests and you get this uplift it's great because you show the power of what's possible, right?
yeah,
But it's terrible because everyone, when they people who don't know experimentation, they refer to it as, you do a button test and you get those experiments, A, don't work in Australia because we don't have enough traffic.
yeah.
And B, it limits the scope of what's possible. And so it's a challenge. So it's Optimizely did a wonderful thing in setting up this category and investing in this category. They weren't the first, but they definitely were the most interested and expanded it. But then on the back of that, some of the stuff that they did, even Pete Coombs, who created Optimizer, said we should never have promoted that. That's been a rod for our own back.
It's how they market it. I mean, it's how I explain my job. Like, I'll just say, I'll do the button test and say, oh, look, we can change the text on this CTA to this, from buy now to shop now, and then, run 50% of traffic to both variations. Like, that's how I sell it to people because it's visually easy for them to understand.
So let me challenge you on that, right? I would love for, at the end of this podcast, you stop calling it CRO and you start calling it experimentation. I'll tell you why. We started with A/B testing. A/B testing, on its fundamental premise, is you're trying to prove, if you go to the scientific method, you're trying to prove that A is the best possible experience, A being control. And you prove that by showing that any other experience is not as good. So fundamentally, an A/B test is proving A is right. So what you're fundamentally doing is an outcome-led activity. You're trying to prove either A is good or B is good, right?
Yep.
So it's an outcome focus, right? If you look at conversion rate optimization, and the language changed to get the market to be interested. What are all marketers interested in? Growth, sales. What's conversion rate optimization? So what do we talk about on website metrics? We talk about conversions. How many sales did we get? How many signups did we get, right? And
Yeah.
so the market changed the language to conversion rate optimization to get marketers to be interested in this conversation, because marketers want more conversions, right? Any person who runs an online business wants more conversions, right? So conversion rate optimization is really a sales outcome or a growth outcome, right? Okay. I want to pose a possible alternative.
Yeah.
What if some of the activities you do have nothing to do with growth? What if some of the activities you do are focused on understanding customer and understanding experience? Because if sales is an outcome of really great experience, i.e. iPhone, i.e. Uber, i.e. all those things that you go, wow, look at that. It's an incredible experience, simple, it has zero friction, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Then fundamentally what you're talking about is understanding customer behavior. Because if I can serve my customer better, then they'll buy more, right? So sales is an outcome of better experience, right? And customers want experience. They want frictionless, they want it simple, they want intuitive. So what if experimentation could be the term that we use that really focuses on the activity of an A/B test at its fundamental layer? Then all we're really doing is it's a research methodology. It's a quantitative research methodology to understand what are customers' preferences in the way I deliver an experience, right? So I'm trying to augment your experience from having a detractor event occurring where you
Mm-hmm.
exit the page at a really basic level, right? Or you don't notice something because it's too cluttered or you're distracted. And I'm trying to create a promoter event. Now, there's a million ways to do it. And I'm trying to understand, how do you want it done? It's no longer about the conversion, and it's all about understanding the customer, quantitatively understanding the customer. Once you go down that mindset, experimentation takes a completely different look to you, because now you're just trying to learn. You're not trying to create an outcome.
I think what you're getting into, and this is a debate I've seen on
Oh,
LinkedIn.
yeah. This is a
I think
beautiful
it's
debate.
test to earn versus test to earn. And I
Test and
guess,
learn.
do you think test to earn can be, if you're just focusing on test to earn, it could be a bit too.
It's tactical.
You could have the blinders
You
on, and
don't
you're
care.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's tactical.
yeah,
If I'm testing to earn, it's tactical. I just need to find the method that gets you to buy,
yeah,
right? Okay. So it's no different to saying, if I give someone 50% off,
yeah,
they're going to buy. Okay,
yeah,
what have you actually learned? Have you learned that you've got better customers? Have you learned that your price point's too high? Have you learned that you've incentivized the really bad behavior, because once the 50% is gone, you lose those customers? So like, yes, you can find ways of driving someone to do something, and it's tactical. Can you repeat it? What have you learned that causes you to understand how to repeat that outcome in a different scenario, in a different context? And so I challenge people who think about what we do as a way of understanding how to create an outcome to really go back to, if you just focus on the customer and understanding the customer,
yeah.
right, through a quantitative method such as experimentation or A/B testing, whatever you want to call it, then fundamentally what you're doing is servicing the customer better. And by servicing people better, people want to spend their money, like guaranteed. That
Mm.
people buy shit they don't need every day.
Yep.
They want to spend their money, right?
Yeah.
They want to open up a bank account. They want to buy Nike shoes. They want to buy the latest phone. We are consumers by our very nature. But they just want to buy it from people who they have the best possible experience with, or get the best possible value, or whatever it might be. So by understanding your customer, you're able to serve them better. If you're able to serve them better, you're able to, make more money. Whereas if
Um,
you're only thinking about make more money, make more money, make more money, then you can't repeat that activity.
as an agency owner, do you feel like that sort of test to earn, which is, I guess, it's a more of a long term play? Do you think that that's an education piece that needs to be
That's the maturity piece that you
maturity
were talking
piece?
about earlier,
Yeah,
because everyone who's going to come into the category, growth is the number one hot topic on everyone's mouth, right? You
yeah,
look at retail, retailers are expanding their retail stores. Everyone's talking growth, right? In a
mm,
downward market, in a climate where everything's expensive, we're talking about global recessions, we're
yeah,
talking about, well, everyone's talking growth, right?
yeah.
So in a market we're talking growth, conversion rate optimization becomes a very sweet conversation because it's singing to the same song. The challenge that you face is, how do you have a mature conversation with an immature customer base? Because a lot of clients out there don't understand experimentation, the fundamentals of what an experiment is. They look for conversion growth, because they have to deliver a growth in revenue because the organization needs growth, right? And so
Yeah.
how do you have a mature conversation in an immature market? It's tempting to go in and just say, we can get your sales growth. And I got to tell you, I'd get tempted by it every day. But if you have an idea of, I'm going to have that conversation, but I'm going to bring you on a journey to understand a culture of experimentation, right? I'm going to show you that what you're trying to emulate in all your digital transformation is all about being a digital native organization. Google, Amazon, all of these guys are on the internet saying experimentation is how we grew our business.
Yeah.
By creating a culture of experimentation, by creating environments in which our staff felt safe in a controlled way to fail fast and fail forward. So our job, yes, we start with conversion rate optimization as the conversation piece because that's where our clients are at.
Yeah.
But what we try to do is quickly get them to understand what you're doing is building a culture of experimentation where you're empowering your people to test and learn and share their knowledge with others. But fundamentally, they're testing and learning about what is the best experience to deliver customers. Off the back of that, you get revenue.
I feel like in this, like particularly like you said in the States, you got Google, you got all the big tech companies that really embrace experimentation culture, whereas I don't think we really have any. I don't know, maybe Atlassian does that, but I don't know any big tech platforms in Australia that really have that embedded into their culture
That's
that
not
well.
true.
To be honest, yeah,
There's a lot of companies that do it. They just don't talk about it, and that's what I'm saying. It's a teenagers' sex life. Like they're people out there just not talking about it, and hence why we set up the maturity index, which is a study of like brands and how they're running experiments. Was a way to pick up the profile to say, there's all these companies running experiments. What are the challenges they're facing? How is your program compared to their program? It's a way of being able to help companies compare themselves to
yeah,
actually know that there's others doing it. Like the guys at Seek run one of the most sophisticated experimentation programs. Challenge they have is how do I scale it? So everyone's at different levels, and there's 5 stages of experimentation maturity. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff we've done there, but there's a lot of examples out there that you can, we've created and we put out to the market as a way of helping the market elevate the conversation. And so, you know, there is companies out there doing it. There are companies doing it really smart. There's a lot of tech companies who've got it embedded. The guys at Zip have got it embedded in their product teams. They're doing more server-side testing rather
yeah.
than front-end augmentation. Or the guys at Seek, they've got an algorithm. They've got a full analytics and AI team who run their program for them. So they're out there and they're doing it. But mainstream Australia brands, you're right, they're still trying to figure out how to do it.
And that just leads me to well, first of all, how can an audience get that what's the maturity
If you go onto
report?
either go onto my LinkedIn, it's got a place you can download it, or you go to the Deloitte website and you go to the blog section. You can download it from there as well.
Okay, cool. And yeah, like just talking about helping Australian companies mature. Like you said, it's not quite mainstream retail or whatnot. Like, how do we go from certain tech platforms and the companies that are really into it to kind of embedding it a bit more into like the mainstream Australian
We need
businesses?
dudes like you, Richard. We need guys like you who. No, really, honestly, we need the instigators, but you guys also need to understand the way you run your program. If you start it at this level of lipstick cosmetics as your metrics, bounce rates, exits,
Yeah.
those things don't matter to an executive team. So the one lesson I would say is the way to do it is to do it in a way that matters to the business. The metrics that matter to the business should be the metrics by which you run your experimentation program,
Yeah.
right? The greatest fundamental flaw of this category is the word hypothesis, right?
Mm.
Truly, a hypothesis is the worst thing that happened to this category because people are so focused on finding a hypothesis, i.e. an idea that they want to test, that they're not really focusing on the problem. And that problem doesn't ladder up to what the business is trying to solve for, right? And so they run off and they do a whole bunch of experiments and look at all these results. And it's great.
Mm.
Like they're testing. There's nothing bad
Yeah.
about that. but they're not testing in a way that when they go to the business and say, we need to hire developers, more UX designers, we need more data analysts, the business goes, what for? Like, well, we're trying to build out this culture of experimentation, but why? What return on investment are we going to get from that? And they're absolutely right, because whatever the business does, whatever the legs are doing, the head and the body needs to run in a direction, right? So are you running in the right direction? Is this activity interesting, but it's not really affecting us, right? And so the way a lot of these programs need to be, and the practitioners who are starting them, they really need to understand what matters to the business needs to matter to the program. Otherwise, when you get to that scaling stage of the 5-step maturity process, you're not going to be able to scale because you can't get funds to hire the people you need to do it. Or you're not going to be able to enable the teams to take on some of the burden of experimentation to grow their business units because they haven't seen the value that actually impacts them. So it's a really complex thing to do, but fundamentally how you begin has huge impacts on how your program or this culture of experimentation will come to life within the organization.
And do you think it's important for that CRO manager or team to be kind of like change agents or evangelists within the organization to try to create the cultural change and hopefully impact from the top down sort of thing?
Yeah. So we always say, and most people don't value this, but most people start an experimentation program running experiments, right? And I can tell you right now, the first stage of any experimentation program is politics. Optimizely made it famous, called the HiPPO. And I think they made a mistake saying, don't listen to the HiPPO, use data. They're absolutely wrong. The HiPPO has the money that can fund the program. So listen to the HiPPO. You need the HiPPO on your side, right? And this is the problem with experimentation. They are purist by their nature, and it's all about the purity of the experiment, and it's all about running experiments. But fundamentally, you're in an organization. You need to bring people on the journey, and you need to bring the people who can fund your program on the journey. So don't avoid the HiPPO. Listen to the HiPPO, and what you need to do is understand the first peak that you will get to in your program is the political peak. You need to bring people on the journey. You need to show the capability. It doesn't matter what tests you run. It doesn't matter how great the test is. It doesn't matter how valid the test is. What matters is that you tested. And what matters is you showed the results. And what matters is that you promoted that and the insights and the learnings you got. It's a very addictive. I can't think of the last time when I presented that I didn't go, here's an example of something we've done. You go A and you B, and you say, what do you think won? And they go, oh, I think B won. And I think A won. You're like, why? Why do you think it won? And they go, oh, because of this. And you have the conversation, and then you show the results. And they're like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. Or I knew that. Yeah, that's great, right? So it becomes addictive. It's a fun game to play because you are fundamentally playing. It's like playing in the casino. It's blackjack, right? You call them blackjack, you don't. And so a lot of times when people are trying to get on this road, they really get down into the purity of the program rather than understanding, and this is maturity, they don't understand where they are and what they need to do in that stage, which is you need to get company buy-in. You need to get those HiPPOs to go, this is fantastic. We need to fund this. Of all the initiatives that we've got to fund, we have to fund this. So let's make sure we put a portion of money aside for this to help it grow. Let's be interested in what it does, right? Because then bringing other parts of the business to go, how can we bring that into our team? Whether it's the member services or loyalty or CRM, how can I bring some of that in my team, right? And that's where your culture is. So first part's politics. You've got to get the politics right. You've got to get the roadshow, the jazz hands. If you don't have a person in your team jazz handsing, look at what we've done. Look at this. It's amazing. Look at my show. You don't have that, your program's going to die. Fundamentally, it'll die, right? If you don't have someone who can play the political game, your program's going to die. It's not going to ever take off that much, right? The next stage then becomes about velocity. How do I actually build a program that can scale, that can deliver velocity, that can deliver value at scale, right? The next stage after that is how do I democratize experimentation? How does everyone do it? And that I don't need to be involved. I can now walk away and create and be really focused on, are we running the right tests? As an organization, are we doing? Spotify is a great example of a company who has democratized experimentation. they've got a squad who don't run a single test. All they do is look on other people's tests and go, hey, John over there's run that experiment. You guys should talk. Or, hey, you guys know that your experiments are going to collide. Your audiences are going to go into each other. Have you guys talked about that? So that all they do is look at the quality of what they're producing at a mass level in an organization, right? That is a real definition of someone who's at a very mature stage. But this is the point that I was trying to make to you. Most people don't know maturity because they don't know the stages they're going to go through. We've been just doing it for so long and done so much of this and got it wrong so many times that we've learned, hey, we're in the political side of experimentation. Let's just get buy-in of people. And now, hey, we're out of that stage. We are now in velocity stage. Let's talk about how we scale this program. Who else can we bring into the program? So we've learned how to do that. And I think teams are going to do that. If you're client side, you want to learn how to do that properly first go. You want to learn, make sure you know what stage you're at, what the game plan is.
Yeah.
If you're agency side, do what we did. Reach out to other organizations. People will share. I'll tell you right now, this category will grow by all of us helping each other grow.
Yeah, and I think you completely got that right, especially in a small place like Australia. It only makes sense to
100%.
To do that, and not everyone wants to take a flight to Denmark or Norway or whatever, or go to CXL live in Austin.
Exactly. There's people locally who are willing to teach, who are willing to talk to you, who are willing to give you counsel and guidance. Because fundamentally, if us old dogs don't help the new guard, then what's going to happen is they're going to burn the market, and it's all going to become about price and speed. And no one wins in that game. Not the client, not the agencies. No one wins in that game.
And that's very, very good wisdom. Thanks for that. And look, just lastly, you recently got acquired. You were like would you call yourself a boutique agency at one point, and you were acquired by Deloitte?
Call me whatever you want. I don't know.
Obviously, Deloitte Digital is I don't know how many people worldwide. Thousands, tens of thousands.
There's a lot. There's tens of thousands. Yes.
What's it like moving from a boutique agency where you were the CEO to now being part of a huge group where you're now a partner / employee and so forth?
We are 6 months in, so I have no idea. I'm still feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. It's just different scale. Different scale, different size conversation, different types of programs of work. It's different. That's all I can say. It is. It's different good in the fact that the ability to have, the reason why it's time for us to integrate into another larger business was we wanted to take the conversation of experimentation and put it on a whole new platform to actually scale the conversation. We were having conversations with some incredible brands at one level, but how do we create this master brand that starts to kind of emanate, this is the way we run programs, these are the things we need to be considering, and helps the category as a whole grow. As a small business, that's very difficult. And the funding that you need to do that is huge. And so with a brand like Deloitte, it gives you far bigger platform and a far bigger voice. The green dot is a super powerful powerful product. And Deloitte Digital is probably, of all the big four, is probably the eminent leader in digital services out of the big four. So a platform like this gives us such leverage to be able to not only help grow the category, but also help clients understand good versus bad. And there's incredible agencies out there. And I don't want this to be, we're good, we're big, they're bad, they're small. Not at all. There's clients at every price point, right?
Yeah.
And there's certain price points we can't work with, right? But there's certain agencies out there that are coming up with incredible talent who come with really good knowledge and capability and skill sets. And so, by us being out there going, hey, experimentation's a thing and it's a big deal, and you need to think about it in these contexts, whether it's a personalization program or whether you're doing it as a customer experience, understanding behavior, it has a role to play. And this platform gives us the ability to talk to the C-suite. The day we started New Republic, it wasn't, I want to build a business to make money. Me and my partner sat there and was like, how do we create something that fundamentally shifts the lives of our teams and helps organizations get better outcomes for their experience, for their customers through experience design, right? That was the fundamental reason why we set up. And so at one point, I remember in our journey, it was 3 years in, where we were like, let's stop competing with other clients, with other competitors. Like, let's stop focusing on what are they doing, why are they better than us, and what can we do better? And let's just focus on building the category. And so ever since, I remember that conversation so vividly, like, let's focus on making this category better. Let's service the category. Our business just accelerated. And, to be found and to be have an interested party like Deloitte to acquire you, like, they don't just walk around and go, I'm just going to buy you today. They do their due diligence. They know who they need, who's going to be the best in market, and how it can help them grow, right? So for us, Deloitte was very much a purposeful, the next stage of our growth plan to help this category grow in Australia is we need a bigger platform. We need a bigger microphone that has much more presence and ominence inside those C-suite to have those conversations and be able to elevate this conversation. And so we're in the very early stages of that. Like, this is like go back to ground zero and start again, right? How do you bring this topic to life for C-suites? How do you get them to understand how important experimentation is? And how do you get them to understand how important it is to give your staff the ability to fail forward, which is a real career limiting idea. And so it's a new platform. It's different for us, but everyone, from us selling and them buying, everyone is really brought into the idea of how do we bring this concept of the culture of experimentation to corporate Australia through the range of skill sets that Deloitte has. I'll tell you one big thing, right, which is what I'm super excited about is, we talk about a culture of experimentation. Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, right? But fundamentally, when they get in, all they do is some A/B tests. And they might teach the client, right? They might teach the client some stuff. But if you're talking about a culture of experimentation and you're talking about failing forward, how does that affect your KPIs? How are you bonused on learning? How are you bonused on failing? How is the organization sharing as an organizational whole what they've learned about customers? Which parts of so there's this whole change program, like actual organizational change program, that comes with not only running experiments, but also how your teams are mobilized and recognized through OKRs, agile team structures, to run a program. So only a Deloitte can actually start to shape those things and create those practices that the market then picks up and goes, hey, we can do that too, and starts to do it as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so, you're talking about change management and...
Correct.
You're
talking about change management. Yeah, and you're talking about taking experimentation further up the pipe around, hey, how can we take experiments that we do on a website into an app? How do we take it into server-side testing? How do we take it into logistics, delivery management? If you ask me, buying a product online is a given. How quickly it gets to your door, how quickly that order is processed and communicated is a huge thing. How do you take experimentation into that part of the e-commerce journey, which matters the most for a customer satisfaction, right? So it just, Deloitte and how wide and how deep it is as an organization just gives us a platform to take this conversation into a whole new era and a whole new generation, which I'm super excited about.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you've jumped on the bandwagon of a really well-known brand and with lots of resourcing and connections, and it's I'm hoping all the best for your new chapter in
Thanks,
your life as a experimenter. Look, how can people reach out to you on the internet and connect with you?
LinkedIn's probably the best one.
Yep.
Or they can all contact you, and you can get bombarded with emails. 3 people will reach out to you. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best platform. And honestly, I put it out there. If there's anybody that wants to learn how to build their agency or how to build their teams internally, it benefits us all to be talking about this, to building the category. If we can build the category together, then everyone will benefit out of it.
Awesome. So the moral of the story is everyone's got to help each other out, and mentors find mentees, mentees find mentors, and how we grow together, grow this category out in Australia. Awesome. Thanks for being 100%. On the show, and I'll catch you around.
Thanks, mate.